Phil, how are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Hey, all the better for finally getting this organised.
I know. I'm excited. I was running a little behind today. The school buses were taking their time. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's tough. It's tough at the top.
Is my audio okay, or is there like a big echo? Because
No, perfect. Everything's cool.
All right.
That might be the best backdrop we've had so far on the show. Yeah, brilliant.
As we say, right?
That's it. I'm going to keep all of this in the episode as well. That's perfect. I gave my head a wee shave and tidied the beard, you know.
Are you using a darkening agent? Because it looks quite nice.
Yes, I'm needing it. See, when I knew I was coming on with Mr. Handsome, I thought,
How did I get that nickname? I've never heard that one before.
No idea. I think I called you it once, and then you never opposed. I guess you never said anything. So it's just not.
I mean, how do you let go of that one, right?
Indeed.
How's the family? How's Tracy? How's Amir? How's everybody doing?
Everything's good, thank God. Everything's good. Just like you, the wee guys off to school, and Tracy's at work. So, yep. So shall we plod on?
I'm ready to rock. Let's go, brother.
Cool. Okay, guys. We are joined today by a Taekwondo brother of mine, Ameris Jnr. Hopefully we'll get to do this again with your brother Jimmy. Just with scheduling and stuff, we couldn't make that happen. But hopefully, soon we'll get both of you on, if possible.
Absolutely, we'd love to give you the full dose or two shots of Ameris as opposed to a single shot this morning. So
absolutely. Do you know? One of the things I've been messaging Jimmy quite a lot this week talking about Khabib's fight at the weekend. So
sure.
Why don't we start there? It's just the pinnacle of what we do, isn't it? It's the pinnacle of martial arts. So
absolutely. And before we even get up and running, I did kind of want to formally thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm very honored with the opportunity. I'm humbled that you would think of me. I'm excited to be here. And you've had some prestigious guests, in your short time doing this. So
yeah.
I'm very excited, brother. I'm very excited. But
listen, Philip, it's we've been Kevin Ross kind of kicked it on to another level, to be honest. That kind of came out the blue, but I try and not see guests as being prestigious against not being. You, any of my other friends that want to come on and talk is just as good for me. So no, you're absolutely more than welcome.
Well, I appreciate you having me. But yeah, to talk about the UFC fight over the weekend, it was, what a way to go out on top for Khabib, right? 29-0. I know you and my brother go back and forth about him and all the fights a little bit more than you do with myself, but it was great to watch. The thing with Khabib is that you know what he's going to do, right? And it's not a secret. And you can see, watch that first round, like he's inching in, and everybody has their game plan. But and Justin Gaethje's an outstanding top of the food chain type of fighter.
Yep.
But Khabib's just able to do what he does, and it's obviously very impressive because it's especially impressive to me because you know what he's going to do, and he's still able to. So, what did you think?
Because I'm such a fan of his, I got nervous. Do you know? I was talking to the students about this, and every time he fought, it was the same feeling as when Floyd Mayweather used to fight. And I used to always think, maybe this is the one, until they actually got into the ring or the octagon with him. And then, as we always say, there's levels to this. Even Gaethje said in the interview afterwards, he said he's strong. I don't think he I don't think any of them realise just how strong he actually is. But unique fighter.
Unbelievable. And I'm actually when it comes to him, I'm the opposite. I've never, ever picked him to lose, ever. Except, I don't want to say except this weekend, but I was interested to see Gaethje against him because, you know, stylistically, he can do what you need to do, right? He has good, powerful low kicks. He can throw volume and power in his hands. He's never on a straight center line. Excellent wrestler, his knockout power, and, you know, great coaching, listens to his coach. But ironically enough, you know, the fight being in the middle of the afternoon, it was actually really nice because I could actually stay up and watch it. But, you know, my father came over, my brother was there, my cousin, some of my other friends, all guys that are, you know, familiar with martial arts and combat sports. And literally my dad looked at me when Gaethje was walking in and he said, he's too tight. And I looked at my dad and I was like, well, that's it. That's a wrap. You know what I mean? And sure enough, I do feel, you know, and I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, because I've been on, you know, coaching on that side of things too, so I understand. But he did look a little bit stiff, and Khabib is one of those guys. And when you get to a certain level, like Floyd Mayweather, when you mentioned it, I also believe Stylebender is going to kind of go in this route.
Yeah.
And Silva had it for that pocket of time where guys, when they see him across the ring or cage or whatever, there's that level of they have to get over it. And to me, even just how Gaethje was throwing his punches, and I know why his hands were a little bit lower. He wanted to, obviously he was prepared to stuff takedowns.
Yeah.
But I do think that he has that aura, or had that aura as well, that a lot of the all-time greats have, that, you know, there's that mental aspect of it that's so important that you have to kind of get over. And then, you know, you start working your plan or whatever. But, you know, everybody has a plan. What's the old adage, you know, the old Tyson adage, everybody has a plan to get punched, and Khabib is truly remarkable in what he's able to do. So
family's definitely going to be something that we hopefully talk a lot about today. And Daniel Cormier was talking last night. I woke up to it this morning. He said that he spoke to Khabib after the fight, and Khabib had said there was a couple of opportunities that Khabib had for arm bars, and he said, you'll maybe pick this up in the States, I know it's really early where you are, but he said that Khabib had noticed that Justin Gaethje said he would never ever tap. Now that changed obviously, but he said he would never tap, and Khabib knew that Gaethje's mother and father were there octagon side, and he said he had the opportunity to put the arm bar in round two, but very quickly changed it to the triangle, because he said, if I arm bar Gaethje, he won't tap, and I'm going to have to break his arm. And he never wanted to do that because Gaethje's mother and father were there. Now, a couple of things about that. First thing is, I think I believe that. I'd like to believe that. If it is indeed true, how sharp do you have to be fighting in the premier martial arts organisation in the world, defending your title, and be able to make a conscious decision that I'm going to switch this so that I don't embarrass or hurt this guy in front of his mother and father?
Yeah, I haven't heard that story, and that's next level on every.
Yeah.
Right? That's incredible. That's incredible that he would even. I'm honestly speechless with that. That's something.
Yeah. So that came from Daniel Cormier, who's obviously one of his best friends and his sort of teammate. But hopefully you can pick that up sort of online later. But Cormier said it's 100% accurate in what he did. Do you know, as I said, I want to really speak to you about lineage today and family and just everything that you guys you have in abundance. That was the reason why I wanted to kick off by talking about Khabib, and obviously he lost his father this year and just how important that was. But let's move on a wee bit then and just talk about the Ramirez lineage and what it was like for yourself growing up as the son of your dad, really.
Yeah. So for your listeners that, may be unfamiliar, my father is Grandmaster Philip Ameris. He is a 9th degree black belt under the legendary Grandmaster Heel Cho. He is Grandmaster Heel Cho's highest ranking student, and his technical director for the AML organization, which is the Action International Martial Arts Association, which Kareem, you are very familiar with, as Kareem, you are a master under Grandmaster Cho as well, which is quite an accomplishment in your own right. But as far as my family's history in the martial arts, it really started with my grandfather. So my grandfather was son of, Greek immigrants. His father came over during, on the proverbial boat that immigrant comes over on, right? And, my grandfather grew up during the Great Depression. He had, an abundance of family. He had, I want to say 4 or 5 sisters and a brother during that time. So, my great-grandfather had to make a very tough decision. They actually had to send everyone away with my great-grandmother so that he could, they could be taken care of and he could take care of my grandfather, his oldest son. During that time, my grandfather started boxing and he became a very, very good amateur boxer. I think he amassed a record of something like 88-8 as an amateur, unheard of. And there are some old timers that he fought, some legends of the ring that he fought and actually beaten the amateurs and everything like that. But his boxing career was ultimately cut short. He had some issues with vision that he couldn't get sanctioned to fight. Doesn't mean he stopped fighting. He actually started doing some what we would call cash pay fights.
Yeah.
In that time. And the unique story about my grandfather, just to go back to him, is his father never wanted him to box. They start hearing that he could fight a little bit, but he kept it a secret. And he started making newspapers. He would never use his name. It was just called the Young Greek. We never say Jimmy Ameris, right? So if you look around our dojang, some of the old newspaper clips, there's actually a picture and then a caption that says, the Young Greek wins in this round, but his head's cut out. So he would cut his picture out of the newspaper, right? So he's becoming an amateur. He's doing some of these cash fights because that's how he was drumming up money.
Yep.
And then finally, my great-grandfather's at a barbershop or something, and somebody says to him just by chance, "Hey, your kid can really go." You know what I mean? What are you talking about? So he shows him in the paper, and the paper that was at the barbershop obviously didn't have the face cut out. You know what I mean? Because my great-grandfather to the punch. So he found out about it. My grandfather boxed for a little bit longer, but again with the eyes, so he couldn't really continue on the route that he was going. As we actually have this conversation, I'm looking to the right of me in our dojang. There's one of his old Golden Glove, Dapper Dan boxing robes. That's pretty cool. I'll have to send you a picture of it afterward. You could reference it. But fast forward. He has some sons, my dad and my uncle and everything like that. And right around age 7, my dad gets in a bike accident. He's riding bikes, falls off the bike, breaks his leg. And at that time in America, Bruce Lee was coming on, So my grandfather, who was, a former fighter, says to my dad, "Hey, we need to make your legs strong. Why don't you try karate?" So he took him to a local dojo. And my dad walked in at age 7 and, much different than the dojos of today, quite frankly, but he fell in love with it and he's been doing it ever since. So he started teaching in 1977. He actually started his own, I don't want to call it a school, but basically a club, 1977. He was, I think, 16 years old. And in the interim, from age 7, he made black belt at 12, which back then, in the 70s, absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
There was no separate kids or adult classes. You're familiar. So
That
was thrown into the mix. He was fighting that whole way, national rankings as a peewee and amateur, up and through kickboxing and everything like that. And then somewhere in around the 80s, I don't know the exact date, he transitioned from karate to Taekwondo. And he wanted a Taekwondo instructor, and Grandmaster Cho is Grandmaster Cho, right? Maybe, from my perspective, I'm a homer, but the greatest Taekwondo master of all time. If you look at his body of work, not just through the martial arts competition, teaching, instructional videos across the board, he's the go for Taekwondo to me. And to many others. But they hooked up in the 80s, and right away there was an instant connection. My dad brought him in to do a seminar, and my grandfather was still living at the time. And my grandfather, being an old school boxer, he was always teaching my dad, because back then the techniques were very traditional, boom, boom. And so my grandfather taught my dad at a young age how to incorporate boxing, because that's what he was, pro boxer, and with the kicks and everything. And when he first laid eyes on Grandmaster Cho, my grandpa didn't give out compliments, to say the least. He said, my dad, you're going to stick with this guy. He knows what he's doing. So that's kind of the origin story. And since then, we've been operating our school, our dojang, in our hometown in New Kensington for upwards of 40 years.
I mean, obviously, we've already spoken about Grandmaster Cho, and I'm sure we will as the podcast goes on. But even Grandmaster Cho's son Jacob, who, as you know better than anyone's just a phenomenal martial artist, who hopefully we're trying to organise a date to come on the podcast as well. Anytime I'm referencing him, I try and make a fine balance between him being Jacob Cho and him being the son of Grandmaster Cho. And you and your brother Jimmy have grown into be your own men as well. How was it growing up as the son of such a martial artist?
It's unique because it surrounds your life, right? And my father, so his time training, it's just not like he goes to the dojang for a few hours and then he leaves. So for my entire life, it's all we've ever really known. I mean, I remember being in my grandmother's restaurant, and they used to say I would kick the doors because he would teach me how to kick the doors and everything. So I didn't really watch. We always tease. I never really watched Sunday. I watched cartoons, but I also watched Grandmaster Cho's Cybervision tapes. I guess I used to, at the beginning of it, there's he walks through this narrow, dojang looking corridor, and I used to. And, there was these old instructional videos of Bill Superfoot Wallace where he would spar the TV kind of like this, and I would spar him back. So all that stuff was just every day of our lives. I grew up literally in a bouncer in the dojang. I was, especially as a kid, I was right up, my dad's, backside. So we were inseparable. And most of our time was spent on the mats. And I think that, ultimately it's prepared me now that I work with my father, and my brother works with my father. I think that that's prepared me, but I could say that all of my life lessons really stem from the martial arts. I was actually talking to somebody the other day about work and everything like that. They were asking a similar question, like, how do you compare things? How do things stack up? And as the boss's son or the master's son, right? And your son is going to experience this inevitably if he continues to train.
He will.
Yeah. I mean, whether he has a choice, number one, but he will experience what I'm going to tell you, whether he likes it or not, whether he wants to or not. And it can be frustrating at times, it can be hard at times, but ultimately it's going to mold you in your character. But I was explaining to one of my cousins who asked, was talking to me about it. I said, just think of it this way. Like when you go to, if just a normal kid went to spar at dojang, right? They're going to spar each other, right? They're going to fight, bang, it's going to be done. Okay. They're going to have whatever effort that the other guy gives them. This guy's going to have his effort. This guy's going to have his effort. Fine. Right. I said, so now I step in there and I'm, Grandmaster's son, and I got this guy. So I'm always going to get 10% more, whether I like it or not, of what this guy has to offer me, right? And if I beat the guy, I'm supposed to do that, right? You know what I mean? If I lose, God forbid, I'm not, nowhere, you're not like your dad. And beating him a lot of times wasn't just enough. You would have to kind of, really show separation. But it's over time, I think, that's helped me, I don't want to say rise to occasions because I haven't always met that expectation, but it's something that I've learned, is a part of life. There are expectations in life. You could either meet them and exceed them and try to exceed them, or you could let them bear you. And I think that the martial arts was really, in that literal sense, helped me across the way and how I approach everything from being a father to, an employee, a business, owner, a son, a friend, all those different kind of things. I think all my life lessons were really learned on the mats.
Yeah. Again, I'm certainly not comparing yourself to like Khabib that we spoke about earlier on, but looking at it from a really positive point of view, growing up with someone, let's talk about the access that you have. You had access to someone the same way Khabib did to his father, at the top of the tree. You have access to that source 24/7, 365 days a year. How was that an advantage to you growing up? And actually, Philip, you on your own are now an exceptional martial artist. Right. During the lockdown, as I said, you came in, on Zoom and taught my own students. You, as your own man now, are an exceptional martial artist. That must have helped you having that access.
Yeah. But tremendously. Even dating back to my grandfather, it's not like we went in the park and threw baseball. The first thing I learned was 2 jabs, right cross, left hook. My grandfather, right? But just across the board, my dad, and I could see it especially now having my own children. He definitely took a hard-lined approach to us with class. And it wasn't like he was forcing it on us, but it was, if you're going to be here when you're here, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it the right way. And obviously, he was much harder on us than me in particular, because we share the name, and I was a little bit more involved, especially earlier on with the school and everything like that. But you talk about access; it was always on at the house. So I think about everything, some of the things that are kind of coming into fruition and everything now, and how what you learn and you may not think is anything kind of prepares you for the future. So just in terms of MMA, and you talk about Khabib and everything like that. So on the forefront of MMA, my father was right there. Back in the late 80s, he was learning submission grappling. He was previously training judo, and he actually put together a video series on striking against grappling. Back in around maybe early 90s or everything like that. So when guys started to come to us for training, and they wanted coaching and striking for MMA, I already had this backlog of knowledge just from being around the house and seeing the videos that he would do, and then being in class with him and being his test dummy at the house when he wanted to try stuff out. So he's been a tremendous everything, mentor, reference point. I couldn't be more blessed to have him and as my father, and my mother as my mother. But even, in terms of how I've approached, particularly with when you start coaching fighters, you maybe need a little bit more specific type stuff. So there were definitely times when I was working with guys, pros, that I would say to him, hey, can you watch this tape? Am I missing anything? And I don't even have to. And I know if he's gonna as straight shooter as it gets. He's gonna tell me, and there's certain things that he's gonna see that, quite honestly, I don't. And that just that's safety net, that security blanket is invaluable. Invaluable. Can't put. There's no price on
that. Let's talk a wee bit about that then, because you mentioned fighters there that you've coached over the last few years. You've been in the corner at UFC. Tell us a wee bit about your experience with coaching professional fighters in the UFC for sure, and Bellator as well, I would imagine.
Sure. So, one of our homegrown students, Don Mazzata, started with my dad when he was a little kid. He come into the school one night, like random Thursday night, where I was teaching I was doing the kickboxing Thursday night classes for us historically sparring. So we do kickboxing drills and sparring on Thursday. So we do the kids and the adults. So he comes in, just randomly, and he goes to me, hey, I want to fight MMA. And I said, that's great. You got to learn how to grapple. He said, nah, I'm just going to knock everyone out. And I said, no, you're not. You really need to learn how to grapple, right? So, he ends up becoming, Dom's an elite level grappler. I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, phenomenal at wrestling. But he come in and we start working, and I was training a little bit more with him, and I was training Jiu-Jitsu at the time as well. So I start working with Dom, and truly Dom and another guy that I had the privilege to work with, Chris Dempsey. I don't want to say they're like pioneers for Pittsburgh MMA, but they definitely put it on the map and took it to the next level. So some guys were, and at that time too, you're talking maybe 10 years ago, 10 years plus. So you couldn't even get, MMA wasn't even sanctioned in Pittsburgh. You know, all those amateur fights, we were going to Cleveland, we were going to, you know, West Virginia, you know, small, like almost little smokers in Ohio. Dom fought one time in a bar. But you know, but all that stuff and understanding of how to, you know, attack for MMA, because the difference in the striking is so much. The space is the big equalizer. You're starting to see guys get a little bit more comfortable in that space now. But if you really look at it, you're either in or you're out. You know, and out is just outside of kicking range. You know, and then if you get in, when you start punching, you know, there's no really like flurry exchanges, because once they start going, you know, your arms are lifting, those become underhooks, or your legs are planted, and that's a good time to take guys down. So, but, you know, a long way around all the strategy, you know, my dad really prepared me for all that, quite honestly. He and, you know, the calf kick is a popular kick you're seeing now. We were always taught kick below the knee because it's harder to grab, and you could stay more protected when you're attacking a grappler. So, as far as the actual experience of training those guys, you know, Dom, for the majority of his career, he ended up moving on to Henry Hoof's gym in South Florida for a while. And then he's back home. He may be doing something here in the next few months. Chris Dempsey, I had the privilege to work with him while he was in the UFC. I actually didn't get to work with him until after his first fight in the UFC, where he gave me a call. And then most recently, a young man named Cody Law, who's actually going to be fighting on the 29th, which is this Thursday, in Bellator. And Cody's down in American Top Team full time. But it's a, you know, it was a surreal experience for me. It was very humbling that those guys chose me to be in their corners. It's a big responsibility. People think that you're just, you know, as a coach, you're there, you're yelling, but you really you're not in the cage. But those guys, I don't want to say their lives are in your hands, but they're trusting you with a lot. You know, one wrong shot or one wrong move, they could be looking at the other side. And I've been fortunate to be on the side of wins. I've, you know, unfortunately been on the side of losses. That's part of the game. But it's an experience, you know, that I look forward to maybe when I have more open available time to kind of commit to, because it's a huge commitment. You know, I don't believe in doing that halfway. But those guys really changed my life, how I looked at martial arts, how I looked at coaching, quite frankly. You know, it cut out a lot of fluff for me. And it was unique to see, especially at the highest level, that it's really the basics that get it done, you know? So that they were life-changing. They're very inspiring to me, you know, in their own ways. You know, Dom always has a sweet spot for me. Those guys, they're like family to me, those guys. And Dom, you know, has a sweet spot because, you know, he came in I think of the night that he came in and said, I'm going to fight MMA. I'm like, yeah, everybody wants to fight MMA, bro, you know? But he did it. You know, he worked his way up. Dempsey is probably the most salt-of-the-earth guy that you'll ever meet in your entire life. Humble, will tell you like it is, extremely hard work. And I love Chris. He's having a tremendous amount of success right now in submission grappling. He's a world ranked, I think he was like first in the world purple belt. He's training for the IBJFF or the ADCCs. I get them confused, but there's a big, you know, world organization that he's going to be competing in here in the next few months. He's gearing up for, and he will do very, very well. He has perfect style for it, and his motor's insane. And then lastly, Cody, you know, you hear about affirmations and stuff, right? And people saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But I've never met anyone in my life like Cody Law. When you talk about self-belief, I've never met anybody like him. No, he's unbelievable. He would say to me, you know, I was teasing him. We had his last amateur fight together I think it was in West Virginia. And we're in a hotel room because there's a lot of time to kill, right? And I looked down at the pad next to me. It was an amateur title. And it said he had his name written down as a Cody Law, and then whatever weight class it was.
Yep.
Yeah. And then he also wrote underneath it, first round knockout, you know? So then I looked at it, and we were staying at a casino, and I wrote down on a piece of paper next to him, Philip Ameris Jr., 40 on blackjack table. This win 1,000. He was cracking up, but he's an unbelievable guy. I think that he's going to make a definite run, especially now that he's down at top team.
See, when you mentioned the low kicking there, and it's like I've mentioned Joe Rogan a number of times on this particular podcast because he was obviously a huge inspiration to do this, and I know that you listen to him. I listen to him. The one thing where he always cracks me up to the extent where I'm shouting at the phone or in the car is when he talks about Taekwondo, and he always he's always talking about a particular style of Taekwondo, never mentions punching, never mentions leg kicks. And I always think to myself, and if anybody's close by, I'll say, he's not talking about our Taekwondo.
Right.
That kills me. I remember having a local boxing coach come to the school to take a session for us, and he had me on the pads, and he said, "Oh, you must have done boxing before. You must have done boxing before," and genuinely and humbly said to him, "No, this is just how we train in Grandmaster Cho's style of Taekwondo." What's your thoughts on that? Our curriculum within our Taekwondo Association is really quite unique, I believe, in what we actually cover.
Yeah, so, in terms of Grandmaster Cho, the greatest legacy for me, or what people should know most, for me at least, when I think of him, about his lineage or his style of Taekwondo, is that it's always been progressing. If you look back into magazines that he was in as early as the 80s, there was one in particular, I can't remember the name of the magazine, but he was jump spinning, hook kicking a boxer, right? The guy had boxing gloves on, boxing shorts, and a headgear. And he had on boxing gloves, no headgear, and he was jump spinning, hook kicking the headgear. And it said somewhere on it, Taekwondo and boxing, the perfect combination, right? So Grandmaster Cho, unlike, no knock on anybody, but it just is what it is. Unlike a lot of the, quote, old masters, when he came to this country, he really examined things and said, okay, boxing has the best hand techniques. Can't dispute that, right? Yeah. Let's work them in to our Taekwondo, because if as good as your hands are, it's only going to make your legs better. If your legs are good, it's only going to make your hands better. So they all work together. When him and my father, or when my father actually approached him about, maybe incorporating some grappling back in the late 80s, early 90s, into our style of training, Grandmaster Cho was 100% for it, which in that time was absolutely unheard of. And I think that that's why him and my father connected so well, because they were never satisfied in a sense of, now I'm the instructor and you're the student. Yeah. They were lifelong students, and I think that that's really trickled down through obviously us and all of our students and all of their students. But I think that that's very important. Dom always references, Mazzata always references, they say, well, you're a Taekwondo guy. And he says, no, it's Grandmaster Cho's Taekwondo. It's a little bit different. He always will correct him. And I always, it always makes me smile when he says it, because it is different. Back in the 90s, we really started incorporating a lot of takedown defense because they saw where everything was going, even before the first UFC. So when everybody talks about the first UFC in 93, coming on TV. Well, quite honestly, even being a little kid, I was maybe at that time 9, 10 years old. Yeah. I already saw a lot of that. Yep. I saw that, and that's basically what we were learning, and my dad was learning. Was called at the time shoot fighting, which was basically a catch wrestling and kickboxing combined. He was working with a guy named Bart Vale. But we saw a lot of that stuff already growing up. So the UFC wasn't like a surprise when we got to watch it on the TV for the first time. And I guess that kind of piggybacks off what you were saying about having, the ultimate reference at home.
One of the other things that always gives me a sort of wry smile, or the George St. Pierre when he was in the UFC, always used to incorporate the Superman punch, and you know what I'm going to say. The commentators, Goldberg, Rogan, used to go crazy. Oh, the Superman punch, followed up by the leg kick. The Superman punch is in Grandmaster Cho's Man of Contrasts, which was printed in 1972 or 73. So I always said this to my students when George St. Pierre was competing. Grandmaster Cho was teaching this 35 years ago. 35 years ago, he was teaching stuff that's now becoming famous, or people are looking at it in a different way.
And I think to piggyback off that too, I don't want to say that there's nothing new, because there are new techniques. Maybe there's new modifications, new ways to throw them and everything like that. But, with MMA, and I hate that term, because to me, martial arts is martial arts.
Yeah.
Right. It's not mixed. But that's how I learned. You stand, you grapple, you go to the ground. It's martial arts. But I don't want to get on that soapbox. But there's modifications. But what the UFC and those organizations have done is it's spotlighted, those modifications and those things in live action. And I remember, so when I was going to University of Pittsburgh, I was doing judo as an elective class, right? Like, 'cause why wouldn't I? It's an elective class. Plus, the judo instructor was a gentleman named Grandmaster Kyu-Ha Kim. Also Korean Grandmaster, legend in the judo community. I think he was an Olympic bronze medalist at some point in time. So I'm taking that class, and my dad, who has the greatest martial arts library probably that you'll ever see on earth in terms of books and videos and all that, he gives me 2 books, Vital Judo, right? One was throws, and the other one was Newaza, which is on the ground, right? So I have those books to this day. I always reference them. And then, years later, when I got out of school, I started training jiu-jitsu a little bit more frequently. And, luckily my instructor, Eddie Vincent, who is a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner and instructor, we were talking about these books, Vital Judo. He was talking about, getting them online or something. I said, yeah, I have some copies of them. He said, look through them. So I'm looking through them, and a lot of the stuff that we were doing in class is in stuff that is people were doing on the high level of competition jiu-jitsu, stuff that was in this Vital Judo book from maybe the 1960s or whenever, it was an old book. So it's unique to see that in everybody's take. And I do appreciate that, mixed martial arts has really put martial arts on a spotlight, I think, in a pedestal kind of that it deserves, quite frankly, in my opinion. And it's nice to see those things evolve. But if you don't have, if it's your first time, your first eyes on something or never seeing it, it's going to be a brand new technique.
Yeah.
At least those are the eyes that you're seeing it through the first time. So
I think you've hit on something really important there, actually. Just the other day, I was reading someone had made a comment on Facebook or Instagram or on social media, and I can't remember who it was now, but they said that they get really annoyed when someone says it's a karate punch or it's a taekwondo sidekick or a judo throw. I think, and you can let me know if you agree or not, I think that cataloguing it in such a way is detrimental to us as martial artists. I look around all the time and I see so many people in one box, and they'll never break out of that box ever. And they go through their full journey in that one space. Am I right in thinking and you might not want to say that's the wrong way, but.
No, I could give you kind of a story to relate to that. So my dad's out in Los Angeles training with Grandmaster Cho. It's 80s, 90s at some point, when he's competing. And he would frequently spar at the Jet Center. Jet Center was an epicenter of kickboxing at that time. Legendary kickboxer Benny the Jet Urquidez was his place. And Grandmaster Cho would take his black belts there to spar, especially the ones that were competing, because you need that type of sparring. So I don't know if it was in sparring or it was in competition. They were doing, my dad took a Muay Thai, was doing Muay Thai rules, right? If you've never been kicked in the legs before, right, and it's the first time, that's an awakening, right? You know, so they start exchanging leg kicks, this, that, and the other thing, and you know, however the sparring or the competition went, it went. But they get back in, you know, to the dojang the next day, and Grandmaster Cho, you know, he's a man of action, and he's teaching my dad the next day, and he said, and you know, Father Conley was there, one of my dad's mentors. He was out visiting him there. And they always tell the story. So he's showing them, he says, you know, leg kick this way, but spinning kick the inside of the leg. And my dad said, well, I know we could spinning kick the inside of the leg. And he said, why can't you? Right? Kick to the leg's a kick to the leg. Yep. So Grandmaster Cho said, watch. And my dad had his dobak pants on. Dobak pants are a little bit baggier, especially on the front end, right? Yep. He said he threw a spinning hook kick to the inside of his leg, and he just smacked the dobak pants. He said it was the fastest, most powerful kick he's ever seen in his life. His Father Conley's jaw, you know, hit the floor. And he said, my dad thought if he would have kicked somebody like that, he would have ripped their shin off. Yeah. But it just goes to show that how forward thinking he was in throwing those kicks. And then he showed him how to set it up and this, that, and the other thing. But I agree with you. You know, punch is a punch, a kick's a kick. There's different ways to throw it. Maybe the origin is from karate or Taekwondo or, you know, whatever other style. But I think the art part of martial art is making it your own, right? You know, and I think that it's important to maybe know the origins of those techniques, because they may help you throw it better for your body type, particularly in you know, to kind of talk technical shop, you know, the side kick. The side kicks, it's a very basic kick. One of the three, you know, foundational kicks. I always say the Trinity's the front kick, roundhouse kick, side kick. Right? Yep. But there's a lot of different ways to chamber the leg when you're throwing the side kick, right? You could chamber it vertically. You could, you know, chamber it a little bit more horizontally. You could point the knee down and kick up, you know. So vertically is more of a Japanese style. Horizontally is more of a Korean Taekwondo style. And pointing the knee down is actually a little bit more like an American style, right? But if I'm teaching a student, you know, and when you teach Taekwondo, you have people of all walks of life, right? And I could use this woman as a reference. One of our black belts, you know, she's in her 60s, right? She can't get her knee, right? She just can't do it. So does that mean that she shouldn't throw the side kick that way? No, you just make it your own, right? Maybe you put your shin vertical. Maybe you point the knee down, you know, and just that little vertical shin or knee down is going to take your kick. It's going to change the trajectory on the kick, right? So yeah, we're in a Taekwondo school. Do we do the kick karate style? Yeah. So, I mean, but honestly, if it works for you, so what? That's what it's supposed to work. You know, you may work towards that goal of building your hip mobility to get in horizontal. That may be like a long-term project for you. Yeah. But in the end, let's learn to throw it both ways, because, you know, if you start, not so much for the everyday person, but when you start competing, you may need those different knee positions to throw or disguise the kick, depending on, you know, your distance or what you're trying to do. So I'm not big on it's a karate kick, it's a karate punch either. That's a long way around that answer. I just think you really have to look at everything, make it your own. That's the art part of it. Add it to your base, and it's only going to make you better.
Yep. The first time we travelled to Ireland to train with Grandmaster Darcy was in the early 2000s, and I'll never ever forget this day, and my legs will never ever forget this day. So we arrived at the airport, and he picked us up at the airport, and he said, let's go straight to the school, not to the hotel, straight to the school. And I was the sort of biggest guy on the trip. So obviously I was number one for demonstrations. And this was early 2000, and this was the first time being in Ireland and meeting him properly. I'd met him previously at the World Championships, but actually properly training. So we get to the school, and we were very traditional Taekwondo until we went there. And the first thing he said to me in the school was, do you know the leg kick? And I said, no, sir, no, not really. Yeah, everything we had done was above the belt, always, and it was point sparring, hands in a traditional point sparring position for the guard. I swear, Philip, I came back from Ireland the next day and my legs were in pieces, black and blue in pieces. And I've yet to meet anybody who has stronger or sharper, deadly shins than what Darcy has. And he cut my legs to pieces that weekend. And it wasn't just that. So maybe just moving on to talk a wee bit more about AIMA and our sort of getting back to our lineage again. I remember coming back, and Tracy, my wife, who you know, she wasn't on the trip, and I said to her, we're doing all of this wrong. I remember the conversation saying, we're doing this wrong. And from that day forth, we pretty much flipped everything on its head. So maybe it was Master Darcy's magic, or maybe it was his leg kicks. Who knows? but the rest is history, so to speak. But we have one of the things that he also taught me, which has been vitally important, is that we don't run clubs, we run schools. And he always stressed that to me. You being with your dad, with your mum, who's now a master as well. How has that style of Taekwondo? How has it brought you up as a person? The respect, just all of that good stuff that we're taught from Grandmaster Cho through your father, through Grandmaster Darcy, and all the way down.
Sure. So, quickly, I remember the first time I went to Grandmaster Darcy's dojang, and it was the night before, I want to say, the second World Championships, which I competed in.
Yep.
And if you've never trained at Grandmaster Darcy's dojang and you are a member of the AIMA, I highly suggest you just fly to Ireland and do it. It has a mystique to it that you can't even describe. We walked in that night to get chairs. Actually, Dawn was with me. He fought, and one of our other black belt students, Nick Como, and we walked in, and there was a real little heavy bag hanging, and all the lights were off, and we just looked at it. So we started working out, out of nowhere. It's an incredible place, and I call him Uncle John. I absolutely love Grandmaster Darcy. But as I referenced earlier, martial arts has truly built my character over time. And Taekwondo, our traditional Taekwondo teaches that what's called the aims to achieve. So in Taekwondo, what Taekwondo aims to achieve is modesty, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And if you think about those words and what they are and what they mean, if you could achieve those things the majority of the time, you're going to be a pretty good functioning human being. Yep. And I use those things. Unfortunately, I don't get to train as often with my father as I'd like to. We both have busy schedules, but those things that he taught me and I learned, my entire life, my 36 years of life, modesty, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit, that you never want to give up, and all those other traits from the martial arts, I literally use every day, every single day of my life. It's how I approach parenting, how I approach work in particular. I will say that how I approach my interactions with my good friends and family. I do separate when I say work. I'm talking my day job, my business, which is Fit2Fight, and my relationship with my wife, everything. And some of those days, like anything, you have better days than others. When the kids are screaming this morning and I got to get everybody out of the house and we're going to be late for the bus, and my dog's eating something he shouldn't be eating, my self-control is probably on the downswing. Let's call it what it is, right? But that indomitable spirit that I learned, I'm never gonna give up. It doesn't even enter my mind. So I think that those things in particular, in learning the traditional values of the martial arts, I think are paramount, probably now more than ever. The thing that I see most in the States, and I can't speak for for things in Scotland. But, you know, when people think traditional martial arts, they immediately think uniform, rigid, traditional techniques, you know, hands to the hip, you know, kata or whatever you want to call it. I honestly don't think that, even though it's been a part of our curriculum. You know, I think more of the, you know, discipline, the respect, you know, those aims to achieve, those things that you learn, that master-student relationship, you know, showing respect for your higher belts, earning your way up. You know, everybody on that mat is equal. You know, you're not going to get a free pass, especially, you know, in our dojang under my father. That's not going to happen, or any of our instructors, quite frankly, throughout the AMA. You know, everything is earned. So, you know, when I think about the traditional martial arts, I think about those things. I don't think about the techniques. Techniques are always should be evolving. Always should be, you know, growing and changing as to, you know, because you learn. But those things are priceless. That aims to achieve. I do my best, like I said, to live that way. And some days, you know, I'm good. Some days I'm not.
Let's talk about Fit2Fight. I see you're wearing the T-shirt there. I know this is your other baby. I know you've got 3 beautiful, absolutely beautiful children, but Fit2Fight's always been your sort of creation as well. And I know how proud you are of that. Let's talk a wee bit about Fit2Fight, what it is, what it encompasses.
Absolutely. So Fit2Fight is, you know, it's kind of one of those things. It's not new, right? So every day, or every Saturday in particular, when my dad started having the school, when I'm a kid, he would come to the school, and him and his friends or training partners would train hard. They would condition, and they'd spar. You know, that was pretty much Saturday mornings, right? So as my mother got more involved with the school, we started to, you know, expand in enrollment and everything like that. And things start going well, but he still kept that Saturday class. It's called Saturday kickboxing. And then with scheduling, it moved to Friday night. So Friday night kickboxing was a program we always offered, and we opened Friday night kickboxing. We ended up opening it to the public because it was a great workout. You know, you were getting authentic kickboxing, you were getting some strength and conditioning, you're getting an hour, you're getting, you know, my dad barking orders, or my mom barking orders at you, and you get a really, really good workout. So people were telling us, we really enjoy this, we wish you'd do it a few more days a week. And my dad would have upwards of 50-some people in class on a Friday night, right? So they start talking about that at that same time. And this is maybe, you know, so we've always done this style of workout in class. But in around that time, maybe 2008, 2009, I'm going to be getting married, right, to my wife Hillary, who's a Fit2Fight instructor, and photographer and nurse and a litany of other things. Patient mother, very patient wife. But you know, I started teaching private lessons, and I was driving. Really, I was teaching out of people's homes in some of the nicer areas in Pittsburgh, and not to be funny, it just wasn't really worth the time. I was spending a lot of time for the money, and you know, as a young man that's getting married, wanting to start a family and all those things, you want to drum up as much cash as you can. So I want to say it was 2010, 2009. I said, you know what? Let me take a shot with the Friday night group. If I get 10 people, it'll be worth it'll be worth my time, plus the privates and all that stuff, right? So we started doing it, and it was, you know, it was authentic kickboxing, you know, so we're jumping ropes, hitting bags, hitting mitts, hitting shields, all that type of stuff. And then we had some strength and conditioning components to it. At the time, we started off with a lot of body weight type exercises and circuits, and we've really evolved, particularly that part of the program. It's something I've really worked hard on over the last few years, integrating kettlebells and proper, you know, progressive strength training. And I have to credit, I call him my strength sensei, a gentleman named Brett Jones, who's the chief instructor for a company called Strong First, which is headed by Pavel Sulin, who really introduced the kettlebell to, you know, the West. Yeah. But Brett has been, you know, an outstanding instructor. He's a world-renowned instructor. I always laugh. I've been so fortunate in my time just to have my father, Grandmaster Cho, Grandmaster Kyu-Ha Kim as a judo instructor, Eddie Vincent as a jiu-jitsu instructor, Brett Jones as a strength instructor. I got, you know, the cream of the crop to teach me. But, you know, we've really evolved the program, and it's been very, you know, I'm very, very proud of it. It's not anything fancy. You know, I laugh all the time. Everybody says to me, I'm not ready for class. I say, well, you know, you start slow and you go, right? And it's my job as your instructor to make sure that we're learning everything the right way. And each week gets a little harder and harder and harder. You can push a little more and more and more. But it's truly been a blessing for me and my family. I have some of the greatest students that I could ever ask for. I mean, they're great people. They have so many great success stories. I can fill a whole podcast telling success stories about them. It's something that I'm extremely proud of.
Yeah, it's the last time we were in Pittsburgh, Tracy and I and Andy, who you know, was there. I think I had a really difficult choice. I had the choice of getting into Fit2Fight or being in your dad's office, just listening to story after story after story. I remember that night, and Andy went into Fit2Fight. He done the class with you, and I, as always, chose the lazier version, and we sat that memory. Obviously, I was there. Your dad, Jacob, was there. That was the last sort of boot camp that he's had in Pittsburgh, and just listening to old stories while you were teaching your class outside. But one day, hopefully, one day we'll get in. Right. Okay. One last question. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Hey, he's a captivating storyteller, so probably better than class. I ain't gonna lie.
Okay. One last question before I let you go on. Hopes for the future. Personally, as a martial artist, you and I are very similar ages. Just moving our wee corner of the martial arts on. What's happening there?
Sure. You know, I think personal goals I have, my goal this year was really to get just a little bit more consistent in training. I've had some injuries over the last few years, particularly 2 operations on my shoulders, torn bicep from grappling Dom, but, just to get a little bit more consistent. So I've been working to kind of build my body back up so it could withstand the type of training that I want to do. Quite frankly, I'd like to, long-term on a personal note, for training, I would like to get my kettlebell certification with Strong First as kind of to tip my hat to my strength sensei. I would love to get back on the mats grappling a little bit more than I can, and obviously continue my Taekwondo training. I do have some goals there, but just trying to ride the wave right now, like everyone else in the present, with the coronavirus and everything like that, and doing the best that we all can, and continue to just stay focused and keep Fit2Fight running, keep the Taekwondo school up and going. I think no matter what happens in my life, martial arts will always be a part of my life. So I don't ever envision me of stopping training. I don't see that happen. We always tease that we'll croak on the mats, but that's just how it is. That's our life. So.
Okay, brother. Anything else you want to say?
No, just again, thank you so much for having me. It's humbling that you would even want to hear what I have to say, and I hope you enjoyed and your listeners enjoy as well.
They will, Philip. I've said this a number of times, but you're an absolute gentleman, so thank you. As I say, let's give a wee shout out to Jimmy. Next time it's got to be all 3 of us together, and hopefully, listen, we can do this anytime. There's no, let's do it as soon as we can actually, and get Jimmy involved. But it's been a pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, and all the best to you and your family and everyone over there in Scotland.
And to you, sir. Okay, take care. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.